In the world of King of Fighters, that title is everything. Like the characters in the game who wish to claim that title, the King of Fighters 14 also has lofty goals. With Street Fighter V fumbling the ball and Tekken 7 not due out until 2017, the spot for King of the mainstream fighters is by all means wide open. Unfortunately though, King of Fighters 14 just can't quite reach it. With esports these days being bigger than ever, accessibility has been a bit of a hot topic with some recent fighting games. King of Fighters 14 features a tutorial mode which is fairly by the numbers, where the game teaches you the basics as Kyo, from running forward, crouching, simple attack inputs, and even the many cancels the game expects you to do at high level play. The King of Fighters 14 tutorial certainly gives you more of an index of the types of things you can do than, say, Street Fighter V gives you. But with the complexity of King of Fighters 14 being just a little bit deeper, it doesn't really give you too much to go on with how you should be operating at a higher level. Yes, the King of Fighters 14 tutorial can teach me how to do cancels, but it doesn't really tell me why I should be doing them, or what I should be getting out of cancels. No, the biggest accessibility addition to the King of Fighters 14 is the rush system. Tap out a bunch of light punches and it will automatically make your hits into a combo. If you have enough special meter, then it will end the combo with a special move. And the game lets you know that you should use this until you get more comfortable with the game. The idea of the rush is all well and good, but ultimately becomes more of a crutch than a tool to help you learn and get better. Why bother experimenting and wrestling with the mechanics when just hitting light punch a bunch is the optimum solution? I can appreciate the idea of the rush, but in practice it just feels like it gets in the way of the learning experience, putting a cap on what you can do rather than pushing you ever slightly forward. Besides this, fans of the King of Fighters will already know what to expect. In fact, the game plays nearly identically to the King of Fighters 98. Iori, for instance, controls almost exactly the same here as he did in 98. It's almost uncanny. All of the King of Fighters' unique systems are present in 14. Evasions are still great, creating a style of duck and weave that no other fighter can truly replicate. It's a super simple mechanic. Each character can slide forward or back, even past the opponent, with some invincibility frames when they do so. This gives the game a layer over the top of simply guarding and jumping, and gives the game a pacier feel than some of its competitors. It's truly the feather in the cap of the series. 14 is admittedly slicker than some of the other earlier entries in the series, but not by much. Most fights in the game are 3-on-3. The game's impressive roster of 50 characters already split into teams, but you can mix and match as you please, even in the game's story mode. There's a hefty amount of new characters in that roster too, somewhere around 15. So it's not just a case of grabbing all the previous characters. Some of the characters do feel like they've had more thought put into them than the others. Even on the design side of things, it feels like some of them might have been a little bit phoned in. However, some of the characters bring a lot to the series and feel genuinely new. Special shoutouts have to go to Shanae, King of Dinosaurs, and Kukri. If anything, it's some of the choice of returning characters that is a little bit disappointing. I mean, why have Kensho when you can have Lucky Glauber, who literally fights with a basketball? The story mode is essentially just an arcade mode sprinkled with a handful of cutscenes. Your choice of characters don't really matter beyond pre-match dialogue when certain characters meet up, providing hints of their shared histories. The story mode isn't particularly challenging beyond the final boss, so thankfully it doesn't get quite as hard as some of the other bosses in the series. The game does do the irritating thing of even awarding mediocre play with S ranks, and personally, I'd rather know I'm not doing great than have the game pat me on the head assuring me I'm just fine, which kind of goes back into the whole rush thing. Graphically, the game is fine. The King of Fighters 14 definitely looks better in its finished build than it did in some of the early footage, but it still doesn't look that great. Just fine is about the best you can say. When a version of the game from 1998 is more visually engaging, you know something might be a little bit wrong. Was it a mistake to bring the King of Fighters into the third dimension with this installment? Well, it's kinda yes, kinda no. The leap has certainly made it lose some of the vibrancy of the original games. Perhaps it was just a mistake to bring it into the third dimension in such a bland way. At least when Street Fighter IV came out, it was doing something stylistically. And don't forget that the gorgeous Guilty Gear XIV Revelator is actually 3D too. What they've done with the King of Fighters 14 just makes it look a little bit like Dead or Alive or Tekken, and not really in a good way. Whatever the reason, the King of Fighters 14 feels like it lacks some of the magic of the earlier games. It's a game that really wants to be King of Fighters itself, but has forgotten that sometimes means having some fun along the way. The King of Fighters 14 by no means does anything very bad, except maybe some of the clunky accessibility features. Mechanically, the King of Fighters fans should be satiated. Even though it doesn't bring too much new to the table, it does play with some of the things that fans already love about the series. Unfortunately though, it just feels like the King of Fighters 14 should have been a pinnacle of the series. But in a way, it's just a reminder of how great the King of Fighters once was. When it comes down to it, we're much more likely to boot up the King of Fighters 98 Ultimate Edition than wrangle too much with this new one. The game has only just released, so we'll update our text review on the site with information about how the online features have panned out when the game is fully launched, so be sure to click through and check that out.